The 3-needle bind off. It's a fairly simple way to join two ends of fabric that have live stitches. Now, it can be two separate pieces of fabric that you want to join together, but here I'm actually going to show what it's like to create a circular piece, just like what you would do in my pattern for the circuitry cowl. And that pattern begins with a provisional cast on. So in this stockinette swatch, I've already picked out the waste yarn and put those live stitches on this needle here. And then this second needle is my last row of knitting, and I know that because the working yarn is still attached right over here. Now, both needles are parallel to each other and they point to the right. Mine are connected as a set of circular needles, but they, of course, could be straight needles, and that might actually be an easier option for you to work with. Since the 3-needle bind off will create an actual seam, and it's going to create a seam that is raised and visible, and I don't want it to be visible on the right side of the fabric, or the side that shows, we're going to put the right sides of the fabric together in this technique, and then we're going to work the bind off from the wrong side, or what would be the inside of the piece. And that is going to allow the seam to be more invisible when the piece is being worn. You'll also want an equal number of stitches on each needle to make the seam work completely across the fabric, and I have 20 stitches on each here. You're also going to need a 3rd needle for this bind off, hence the name 3-needle bind off, of course. And this needle should be the same size as the needles you used to make the piece. If you don't have a 3rd needle that's the exact same size, you can switch out one of your original needles for maybe one size smaller, and then use that original needle to do the bind off maneuver. And this is going to help you match your tension a bit better. Now, for this demonstration, I'm going to use a different color of yarn just to show the technique, but you would typically use the working yarn in the same color as your piece, like what I have over here. So, all right, here we go. As I said before, I am going to be putting right sides together so that we are working from the wrong side of the fabric. I have the points of my needles are both parallel to the right, and I've got an even number of stitches on each of those needles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3rd needle and I am going to put it through the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the first stitch on the back needle. I'm going to put it through as if to knit. Now with my working yarn, and again, this is the new working yarn that I'm working with, I'm going to go ahead and knit those stitches and then pop them off. Essentially what I'm doing here is knitting 2 stitches together. So now let's do this again. Into the first stitch on the front needle as if to knit, and then into the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit, and then knit those together and pop those off. So now what I'm going to do is the first part of the actual bind off. And this is where I will take the points of the point of one of the needles in my left hand, and I'm going to place it into that first stitch that I did, pick it up, and pass it over the second stitch. There we go. I just bound off 1 stitch. So let's do this again. The next step is to put 1 stitch through the front, or the needle through the back, and then go ahead and pop those off, and then I bind off. There you go. You can start to see just the beginning there of a little seam. And I'm going to continue to do this all the way across all 20 of my stitches. So I'll come right back. Now, once you get to the end of your row and you've bound off all of those stitches, you're going to have your final stitch, which is just going to be an open loop that you'll want to close just by running the yarn through that loop and cinching it nice and tight there. But here's what it looks like on the inside. We've got a raised ridge that you'll see here that is the seam. And let's take a look at what it looks like on the outside. So it creates a sturdy and really tidy seam, and it's fairly quick and simple to do. Now, I mentioned before that the bind off is usually done on the wrong side so that it's hidden when it's worn, but you could absolutely make the design choice to have the seam be visible on the outside, just like this. And maybe use a contrast color to add a nice pop of color to a shoulder seam or maybe the top of a hat, whatever you like. But there it is, the 3 needle bind off. Go ahead and have fun with it.